Cream were the band that really brought a kind of progressive blues sound to the USA. And, you know, quite frankly, they didn't care whether you liked them or you didn't. They were just going to go there. They were going to do the show their way and get the hell out of there and you know, get out of Dodge and stash the money in a bank somewhere far away. Same thing with Led Zeppelin the following year. You know, they came in. They didn't care whether you liked them or not. They barnstormed their way across the USA, and on their coattails, Jethro Tull arrived. And you know, frankly, I had the same attitude. I didn't expect America was going to like Jethro Tull, and I didn't really matter to me whether we were successful or not, because it's a long way from home. It would matter if we weren't doing okay in the UK or even in some European territories, but it didn't matter to me that, you know, if we weren't successful in the USA.
Well, first of all, it's unusual because it's a book about a film about an album. So it's inherently cross-platform in print, but we get an opportunity. It was the first time that they had ever allowed an audio taping of the making of an album. And we don't usually get to see the creative process at work. That's one reason I admire your show, because the creative process is usually, first of all, hidden, right? It's very often it takes place either internally or in private. And so, but that process of creation is a mystery. It's magic. People are eternally fascinated to learn, how did something get made of any kind?
He said, yeah, Paul Simon, you know, Paul Simon is a singer from, you know, Jamaica, but he didn't say Queens. He said that later. When I said Jamaica, I said, which song is singing Mother and Child Reunion? I'm like, oh, yeah, from Jamaica, Kingston. He says, no, Kingston. It's not Kingston, Jamaica. It's Jamaica, Queens, New York. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, okay. What does he want? You know, they said they wanted to come to the studio. Studio? Wow, now I'm nervous to go to the studio to work with Paul Simon, because you know, I don't know much about the guy. And so the boss gives me the money, says, don't take the train, take the bus. And because the bus is better, there's not too many people, and you have the bass without hand, you know, case and greasy hands and everything.
Well, we were going to wait till the very end, but I think now that you've spoken of your book, it's time for Tom and I to join it. Ready, Tom? Yes. 1, 2, 3.
Do it and let me get a screenshot of you. Do it again.
Okay.
Yeah, we
1,
second take.
2, 3.
Got it.
There you go.
Because one of the things that gave me courage was the jazz bass players, the big name jazz bass players, because they stood out, and they did do solos, and to the extent that I thought, at least at that time, people regarded the jazz bass as a solo instrument.
Okay.
You know, it was, you know, not only did it keep the store, as Eugene Wright used to tell me, but it also, you know, they would take solos, and the solos by early on in the late 50s and 60s, so it was absolutely phenomenal playing. And so that was an inspiration. I figured, well, if in the jazz world the bass can be a solo instrument, why can't it be classical? Right. And interestingly enough, when I played my first recital in Town Hall in New York, That's where everybody did their debut. There were hardly any classical bass players in the audience. There were mostly jazzers. I mean, you know, Ray Brown, Percy Heath, Ron Carter, everybody was there.
Well, working with John Lennon was very easy because when I met him in 1971, it was the first time I ever saw him. He had been a Beatle, you know, since 1960, whatever. And as Beatles, they did photo sessions every day, several times a day. It's an interesting thing. If you look at pictures of the Beatles, they're wearing a different outfit in almost every single picture. There are pictures of the Beatles in every outfit, from bathing suits to duck costumes. I Am the Walrus, you know, but there's a million different suits, ties, shirts, polka dot shirts, black shirts, you name it. There's a picture of the Beatles. They must have done, because they're only together like, what, 4 or 5 years. And
When they hit their international fame, yeah.
I mean, a lot of bands have, like, you know, 10 different pictures that you know about them or something. They do a picture 2 or 3 times a year. They'll do a photo session because bands need promotion and pictures. But the Beatles must have done photo sessions every day.
And in fact, the last song we recorded was Time of the Season, and we were really up against the clock. And the pressure did mount. The song had only just been written, and I was having trouble with some of the phrasing, and Rob was very kindly trying to guide me from the control room through headphones. You know, no, you sing that on the beat, push this bit, and then come back on the beat again. And it's getting more and more complicated, and I had a big clock in front of me. So I knew we were running out of time. It was a red light underneath that was bearing into my brain, you know, that studio time, red lights on. And our language is getting worse and worse. There's me in the studio, there's Rod with all the guys, engineers, Abbey Road people, so they can hear what we're saying. And the language was getting worse and worse. And I couldn't tell you the real language, but this particular bit is true, where I started to get extremely frustrated with him. And I said, listen, if you're so bloody clever, you come in here and you bloody sing the song. And he said to me, you're the bloody lead singer. You bloody stand there till you get it bloody right. And it's always made me laugh, because at the same time, we're singing, it's the time of the sea for loving. But in the background, that's what was going on.
It was, let's see, what year was it? It was when Paul McCartney was, he'd been arrested in Japan.
1980 then, right? 79, 80?
So you must have been probably 79, because we went, Michael Dunford and I went up to Warner Brothers offices in London. And I think we'd gone out to dinner with the managing director, who was a really great guy. And then we came back to the office to get some champagne or whatever. And then in comes, it's after hours, Eric Idle comes in and Chrissie Hynde come into the office. And so I think we were having a drink, you know, I can't remember all the details. I wish Mickey was alive, because he'd probably remember, you know, but it was ridiculously funny, of course. And so Eric said, I think we should call up the Japanese embassy and try and get Paul out. Press whatever he was, because we were all drunk, you know. And he's like, hey, yeah, calling these people up.
Well, the personalities, I think, made it special. You know, everybody got along really well and sort of complimented each other. I think in the liner notes to the CD that I produced called The Right Stuff, which is like a compilation of the Stuff albums, you know, I talk about the approach being an orchestral approach to the groove. And to elaborate on that, it's like everybody had a role to play, you know, and Gordon always used the metaphor of a football team, you know, that he was the quarterback and somebody hiked the ball to him and he was going to do something, throw a pass or do a run or do a Hail Mary or, you know, whatever analogy works. And we were either the blockers or we would run defense or we would, you know, so the football analogy really works and the orchestral analogy really works for me too.
Impression I got with him was I always thought he was quite smart. You know, he'd given his, at least for me, he gave the musicians enough slack. You could be yourself. You could play in your own style.
Yeah.
He had a way of like directing you to make a good contribution to what he wanted, but without altering his style or you know, he wouldn't get you to play something you were uncomfortable with.
Right, right.
I thought that was quite a talent that he could recognize, you know, he could walk that line.
You can either answer it or not. It's a little provocative.
Oh.
I'll just say the word Taurus.
Well, I think the Taurus inspired the introduction to Stairway to Heaven. I believe that. I mean, in fact, we opened. Those guys opened for us, and we opened for them enough times. I mean, they were jamming on Fresh Garbage, so they were listening. And you know, to be honest, I was the guy that was really sort of instrumental in pushing this over the edge. I thought, surely, if we don't do this now, Randy will. And this was after. I mean, this is, you know, several years ago, but Randy was long gone. I mean, I thought, God, if we don't give Randy an opportunity to get credit, it will never happen. Let's pull the trigger. I couldn't actually be the person to bring the suit. It wound up being Mick Skidmore. The point is that I think it was a success because Randy was able to tell his story multiple times in the media, you know, his interviews and stuff. And that's all I wanted. I just wanted Randy to get his opportunity. And
I also think in current music, and it's something that I think about, and if you look at how in the earlier 20th century, timbre was really introduced in a way that we may have covered a little bit of this before. I might be repeating a little bit, but timbre was introduced, you know, by composers like Anton von Webern, Varese, as being something that was as important, as significant as melody, rhythm, and harmony. Right. Whereas before, orchestration had always been thought of as, it was important, but it wasn't at the forefront. And I think as electronic music developed, of course, that's what enabled composers to work like painters and create, you know, their own timbres, invent timbres that were not possible with acoustic instruments.
Yeah, because the very first one we walked into was Abbey Road. That was
wow.
We did the first 3 EP.
Yeah.
And I remember us all coming into the foyer of the when you come into the entrance, and they were just wall-to-wall Beatles posters and whatnot, or images of the Beatles, and it was quite overwhelming. And I remember that the band would go through this ritual of saying Swindon road names in the hall, and say that's the first time that that name has been used in this room.